time for our weekend recap of the PBC card this past Saturday night. Gervonta Davis's big pay-per-view debut against four-division champion Leo Santa Cruz. First things first, let's talk about the fight. The aesthetic of the match was more or less what I expected and what I imagine many people expected, that Leo Santa Cruz really is the volume guy here. He's the busier puncher, so he would be the one regularly letting his hands go as Gervonta inches forward looking for an opening, looking for a counter shot. To Leo's credit, he was actually getting through with some of that stuff, with some of that work.
Yeah, he was touching Gervonta.
The big question ahead of this fight was, would Leo Santa Cruz's volume punching get to what could be a weight-drained Gervonta Davis, or would Gervonta Davis arrive well at the weight, healthy, fighting fit, or at least fit enough to score a knockout, as he was so obviously the bigger puncher in this fight? And we see how it all worked out. As Leo was being backed into the ropes, he let go of a string of right hands, approximately 3, and on the third, he was timed, he was countered, he was slapped. It really was quite the highlight reel KO as Gervonta leaned off to his left and let go of a big counter uppercut. Staying off the line, leaning off to his left and whipping a big left uppercut that closed the show for Leo Santa Cruz. And as you can imagine, this kind of a highlight reel KO may get the less informed a lot more excited than either I or you, because we knew that Leo Santa Cruz at this weight wasn't much of a puncher. He retained some of his characteristics, that he's a volume guy, that he's a puncher, yes, but he doesn't have the most authoritative shots at 130 pounds because, well, he wasn't that big a puncher at 126. And Leo had just moved up to this weight. He had one fight here against Miguel Flores for the vacant WBA title. And, you know, we didn't wait till after the fight to start saying this. I've been saying this throughout, all in the build-up. Leo did not look impressive against Miguel Flores. He looked flat.
The guy looked like he couldn't crack an egg.
And the only chance that I gave him to win this fight was based on whether or not Gervonta Davis is weight drained, whether or not it was a hard cut, and as a result of that, he might be more susceptible to damage from Leo's volume punching. But the focal point there is Davis's condition more than Leo's characteristics. That being said, Leo doesn't have an extensive body of work in the super featherweight division. He's not proven, he's not solid like a Miguel Berchelt. You have to wonder that if it were Miguel Berchelt, who has a chin, who's a volume puncher, same way that Leo's a volume puncher, with the difference being that at this weight, Miguel Berchelt packs a much more authoritative shot than Leo Santa Cruz, and he's a lot more proven. He's taken out several top 10 contenders here in the past, taken out Francisco Vargas 2 times, Takeshi Miura, Mickey Roman. He starched Jason Sosa. The feeling is that even though Leo Santa Cruz was a volume puncher, at this weight, the guy couldn't crack an egg. He just didn't pack the most authoritative shots. If Gervonta were opposite the ring, a volume puncher like Miguel Berchelt, who takes a fantastic punch and delivers one, a volume guy who's far more proven at this weight than Leo, how would Gervonta Davis have dealt with that? In truth, I don't think we're ever going to know. I don't think we're ever going to find the answer to that question.
Gervonta's just going to keep fighting little guys.
The feeling is that even though Leo Santa Cruz is a volume puncher, he would struggle to get Gervonta Davis's respect, because volume puncher that he might be, he's not a big puncher, especially at this weight. And you have to wonder, would Gervonta Davis have continued to inch forward, looking for a counter shot, looking for a countering opportunity, if Leo could land with more authority, if there were more on the shots? Because I'll tell you, at this weight, Leo Santa Cruz ain't the puncher that Miguel Berchelt is. That's the feeling. And that's what people are complaining about, that while the less informed might look at a knockout like this and get all excited, get all in a tizzy, the more detail-oriented fight fans that are out there, the hardcores, they know better. They know that there was definitely angling here. You guys chose this guy for a reason. Why Leo Santa Cruz and not Miguel Berchelt?
Well, why not someone solid at lightweight?
Isn't that where Gervonta Davis moved up to before this fight? Why not fight somebody solid up there? Why come back down to super featherweight to fight a guy that just got there?
For a title that you vacated.
Why is it that Before Gervonta Davis even moved up to lightweight, before that, when he was the IBF champion, why didn't he look to fight guys like Miguel Berchelt?
Guys who can punch.
Why didn't he look to fight them then, and why isn't he looking to fight them now?
Because he's not some little guy moving up.
Don't confuse this with Teofimo Lopez fighting Vasyl Lomachenko, who moved up from 130 to 135. Vasyl Lomachenko's first fight at the weight was against an active, reigning world champion. He wasn't fighting some no-name for a vacant title. He fought a reigning champion, and he beat him. He stopped him. He fought another champion in Jose Pedraza. Took his belt, too. He defended his belt against Luke Campbell, very big kid as far as lightweights go. You can't compare those two situations because Vasyl Lomachenko more than established himself in the lightweight division. And it wasn't by fighting no names for titles no one was holding. How many fights did Vasyl Lomachenko have at lightweight before he fought Teofimo?
4.
How many fights did Leo Santa Cruz have at 130 before he fought Gervonta?
1.
You're not going to convince me that Leo Santa Cruz was just as proven at 130 pounds as Vasyl Lomachenko was proven at 135 pounds. That's far from the same thing, far from the same situation. While guys like Teofimo are risking it all, taking chances because they believe in themselves against fighters like Vasyl Lomachenko, the pound-for-pound darling, Gervonta Davis is catching little guys on the come-up.
Am I supposed to be impressed?
You think I don't know better? You think I don't know what formula you're using? You're doing here at 130 pounds what you just did at 147 with Errol Spence Jr. and Mikey Garcia.
He couldn't even knock the guy out.
Tell me if this sounds familiar. The guy who the network and the promoter are so obviously behind versus a naturally smaller guy who happens to be a 4-division champion. Wasn't Leo a 4-division champion? And wasn't Mikey Garcia a 4-division champion? And weren't both of those fighters naturally smaller guys than either Gervonta Davis or Errol Spence Jr.?
Yeah, they were.
And don't both of those fighters have a few Chicano fans that you're hoping move the needle, you're hoping show up at the live gate to support their guys? Isn't that what you're shooting for? I mean, it's pretty obvious what formula they're employing here. You know, it wasn't Cinco de Mayo last I checked, but what's Gervonta Davis do? He comes out with a makeshift mariachi getup.
What was he paying homage to?
If it actually were a Mexican holiday, like a Cinco de Mayo or something like that, I could have understood it were in celebration, commemoration of the holiday. But last I checked, it wasn't a Mexican holiday, yet here comes this guy wearing this mariachi outfit. And we all know what they're aiming towards. To galvanize the Chicano fans to either love Gervonta Davis or hate Gervonta Davis, the same way that Floyd Mayweather Jr. employed this strategy to either be loved or hated. In any event, this jukebox is playing a very familiar tune, albeit in a different restaurant. It's pretty clear to see what these guys are doing and what path they've got Gervonta Davis on. There's no casual observers here. We know full well who Leo Santa Cruz is and what he was coming from.
He's a little guy.
We also know Gervonta Davis. We know who he is, who he has been, and what he's coming from. So, highlight real KO that this might be doesn't fool me, doesn't fool anybody. It's not like you did that to Miguel Berchelt. If you did that to Miguel Berchelt, well, I could take my hat off to that. I could get behind that. You know that Miguel Berchelt was the WBC champion while Gervonta Davis was there at 130 before he moved up to lightweight? You know, he's still the champion there. I mean, he's the longest reigning champion at this weight. But who does Gervonta Davis want to keep busy with? A little guy moving up. Why the hell would you expect me to get excited about that? If you're excited about Gervonta Davis, it's got to be for some other reason, something other than boxing. Because as far as boxing goes, hey, if you did that to Berchelt, I could get behind that. This is just another little guy on Gervonta Davis's resume. While you have young fighters like Teofimo Lopez risking it all, taking chances against the likes of a Vasyl Lomachenko, what Gervonta Davis is doing is hoping to fool people by knocking off little guys.
He's not going to unify with anybody.
He's not going to unify with anybody at 130, and he's not going to take on any of the top-tier talent at 135. He's not going to fight Devin Haney. He's not going to fight Ryan Garcia. He sure as hell ain't going to fight Teofimo Lopez. They've already started their plan of action to sabotage that fight.
Gervonta has to be the A side.
Of course. Of course he does. Yeah, that wasn't expected at all, right? That doesn't sound familiar.
Didn't see that one coming.
As soon as Gervonta Tank Davis doesn't have a crutch to lean on, as soon as there isn't an angle, you see what kind of talk you get out of these guys. So, pardon me for saying so, but if Gervonta Davis has now crossed over into the pay-per-view market, and you've got to pay pay-per-view prices to see this guy fight, he won't be getting my money. Now, rules are rules, and we must abide by them. We all know that Leo Santa Cruz was ranked on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list. I was never very happy about it, you understand. I never wanted the guy to be there, but the stats were what the stats were. Leo Santa Cruz was a reigning 4-division champion who had unseaten 2 active reigning world champions, and the list had to reflect that. Otherwise, it would lose all credibility. It would lose its purpose, its function, to weigh these fighters' careers against each other as a testament to their skills. As a result of that, Leo Santa Cruz had earned a spot on the list, and per the rules that govern this same list, Gervonta Davis has now earned a spot, as he has knocked out Leo Santa Cruz, was ranked on this list. For that, Gervonta Davis now occupies the number 10 spot on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list. Those curious as to why number 10, why not higher on the list, given how sensational his victory was, his big knockout of a little guy. Well, it's simple. In knocking out Leo Santa Cruz, that doesn't give Gervonta Davis the number of world titles that Jermell Charlo holds, who is now ranked at number 9. All those who were ranked behind Leo have moved up 1 spot, Jermell Charlo among them, and currently, Jermell Charlo has taken out the same number of world champions as Gervonta Davis, but currently, he's in possession of more world titles. Jermell Charlo is a unified champion, something that Gervonta Davis has never been, and in all likelihood won't be, because I don't see this kid unifying with anybody at 130 pounds. A similar hierarchy of thought applies to Juan Francisco Estrada, a fighter with a more robust body of work than Gervonta Davis, who has been a champion in more weight classes than Gervonta Davis. And forget about Teofimo Lopez. It's self-explanatory why he's ranked several spots ahead of Gervonta Davis, because he took out the pound-for-pound darling. Vasyl Lomachenko, he's currently a unified champion, something that Gervonta Davis has never been and won't be for the near future, at least the foreseeable future. And, the higher up on the list you go, the more obvious it becomes that Gervonta Davis is the least accomplished fighter on this list. That's why he's ranked in at number 10. And I know many of you out there may not agree with this. I know many of you may not even think of Gervonta Davis in this scope, in this spectrum, but that is purely anecdotal. And I share those anecdotes with you. The truth is, I'm not losing sleep over Davis being there at number 10, because there's getting a rank on the list, and then there's keeping a rank on the list. There are other more deserving fighters out there, unified champions, who, as soon as they return to action, could very well bump him off very soon. One name that comes to mind almost immediately is unified welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr., who's set to return to action before this year is out. If he successfully defends the IBF and WBC titles, he will have a more credible argument than Gervonta Davis, as he's unseating the same number of world champions as Gervonta, who unseated Jose Pedraza for the IBF, and this past weekend, Leo Santa Cruz for the WBA. Errol Spence Jr. unseated Kell Brook for the IBF, and Sean Porter for the WBC. But the tiebreaker here is Errol Spence Jr. is currently in possession of more world titles, and if he successfully defends them against Danny Garcia, he will have a more credible argument to gain a spot on this list, albeit the number 10 spot, the spot that leaves you in the most danger of being bumped off, but better still, he'll have a more credible argument than Gervonta. And the same is true if Danny Garcia beats Errol Spence Jr., but the difference between Danny and Errol is Danny's been a champion in 2 divisions before. If he, by some chance, beats Errol Spence, he will not only gain a spot on this list for having a more credible argument than Gervonta, but he won't rank in at number 10. He won't be the guy in the most danger of being bumped off, because I reiterate, Danny was a 2-division champion. If he takes Errol's belts, he will qualify. You gotta remember, Danny Garcia was a unified champion at 140 pounds. He held the WBC, WBA, and Ring Magazine titles there. He moved up in weight, fought for the vacant WBC against Robert Guerrero, and became a champion there. If he beats Errol, not only will he become a champion again, but he'll be a unified champion. Will have been a champion more times in more weight classes than Gervonta Davis and Jermell Charlo. That would give him a precedence, based on these statistics, to be ranked ahead of both of them. At minimum, that's what we know here and now. That is the process of elimination, folks, and what that accounts for on the list is time. This being the what have you done for me lately sport. It's not just taking into account things that you've done in the past, but what you're doing in the present. What you're doing in retrospect with what other people have done and are doing themselves. And Danny Garcia, if he beats Errol, will have a more credible argument than Gervonta. What's keeping Danny off the list right now, in spite of his previous accolades having been a champion in 2 weight classes, is that currently he's not a champion. He's not holding any full-fledged world titles of any kind, and per the rules that govern the list is only for winners and only for champions. Any fighter absent of a world title cannot maintain a spot or achieve one on this list. You've got to have a belt just to be considered. You've got to have a belt just to get mentioned, and you've got to hold on to it just to get in.
And that doesn't guarantee that you get in.
The specificity of this governing criteria maintains the list's overall exclusivity. As a list that accounts for the best and brightest fighters in the sport of boxing, it's supposed to be exclusive. It's supposed to be hard to get on.
And stay on.